I met Adrian at a small gathering I almost did not want to attend because I had only gone since a friend insisted, and I did not want to feel alone that evening, so when I entered the room filled with people talking and laughing, I stood quietly at the side feeling like I did not belong until I noticed him standing near the window, calm and steady, unlike the others, and as his eyes moved across the room they eventually stopped on me. For a moment I felt frozen, yet instead of turning away, he walked toward me at a steady pace as if he already knew where he was going. When he finally reached me he said hi in a calm voice while looking directly into my eyes like I was the only person in the room. As we began talking, something felt easy and natural, and he listened to me carefully as though every word I spoke mattered, so that by the time the night ended, I had lost track of time completely. When it was time to leave, he asked, "Can I see you again?" And although I did not overthink it, I simply said yes. As I walked home that night, I felt something deep inside me, as though my life was about to change in a way I could not yet understand. The next day, Adrian did not disappear because he sent me a simple message asking how I was doing, and although it was small, it made me smile in a way I could not explain, and from that moment he began to appear in little but meaningful ways, sending messages in the morning, checking on me during the day, and asking thoughtful questions at night, while never rushing me or forcing anything, but instead simply staying consistent. As we talked more deeply about life, fears, and dreams, I began to open up in ways I had never done before. He listened without judgment, which made me trust him more than I ever had anyone. As we walked together one evening under soft streetlights, he stopped, looked at me, and said, "I don't play games with love." Though his voice was calm, it carried seriousness. He added, "If I care about someone, I care fully." I believed him because everything he did felt real, and without realizing it, I was slowly falling for him. As days turned into weeks, Adrian and I grew closer because we spent more time together talking, laughing, and sharing moments that felt genuine. He made me feel seen in a way I had not experienced before. One evening when he took me to a quiet place overlooking the city, where the lights below looked like stars, he held my hand and said, "I want a future with you." My heart began to race. He continued, "Marriage, stability, a life together, a home we build ourselves," and though I was unsure of how to respond, his eyes showed no doubt, so I chose to trust him completely. From that moment, everything felt perfect, yet beneath that perfection, something deeper was quietly forming that I could not see. After that, everything changed when I noticed something different in my body, and although I ignored it at first, the feeling grew stronger until I could no longer dismiss it. So I went to get checked. When I received the results, I froze because I was pregnant. In that moment my mind filled with fear, hope, and confusion all at once, yet one thought stood above all others, which was the need to tell Adrian, believed he would be happy and that this news would bring us closer. So I held the test results tightly as I walked toward him, imagining his smile and expecting his support, but when I finally told him, his reaction was nothing like I expected. Instead of joy, there was only silence, and then something colder appeared in his expression. He stepped back and said, "This changes things," and when I reminded him that we had spoken about a future together, he replied, "I didn't ask for this." In that moment, my world began to break as I realized he was pulling away from me and from everything we had built. From that day, Adrian slowly distanced himself because his messages became shorter. His replies became colder, and eventually he stopped calling altogether. Despite my efforts to reach him, there was no response, only silence. As the days turned into weeks, I came to accept a painful truth, which was that he was gone, not physically, but completely from my life. I sat alone one evening holding my phone with shaking hands. I whispered, "I'm completely alone," because for the first time, the reality truly hit me, and I felt like I had no one. As time passed, people began to notice, and whispers spread as questions filled the air about where he was and what had happened. While some people looked at me with pity, others judged me, and even those I once trusted began to distance themselves, leaving me feeling smaller and heavier each day. One night, overwhelmed by everything, I sat in my room holding my stomach, ready to give up, but then I felt a small movement inside me. I placed my hand on my stomach and felt my baby move. Something inside me changed. I realized that my life was no longer just mine, so I made a silent promise that no matter what happened, I would not give up. I continued to push forward through the months that followed. Although each day felt heavier than the last, I refused to stop because my child depended on me. I worked long hours doing whatever I could to earn money, and even when my body grew weaker and my strength faded, I kept going because I had no other choice. On the nights when exhaustion nearly broke me, I would sit quietly and speak to my unborn child, whispering, "I am here, you are not alone." Even though I often felt alone myself, yet I held on because something deep inside me refused to let go. One night, however, everything caught up with me as I was returning home after a long day, and suddenly my vision blurred, my legs weakened, and my body gave out as I collapsed to the ground. For a moment the world went completely dark, but when I slowly regained consciousness, I struggled to sit up as my body ached and my mind trembled with fear. In that fragile state, I placed my hand on my stomach and remembered why I had to keep fighting, because I was no longer alone, and I had a reason to survive. As my child grew, I began to notice something different about him, because even before he was born, there was a calmness about him that I could not explain. After his birth, that feeling only became stronger. He watched everything carefully, listened with focus, and learned faster than I expected. One day his teacher called me with a serious tone, saying, "I need to speak with you." This made my heart race until she smiled slightly and said, "Your son is special," and although I did not fully understand what that meant at the time, I knew one thing for certain, which was that he was different, and somehow, that difference gave me hope. Raising him was never easy, because I had to make constant sacrifices every day. Working harder while spending less on myself. When an opportunity came for a better school that I could not afford, I looked at my finances and then at my son and made a decision that would shape everything. I chose to do whatever it took, even if it hurt and even if I had to give up my own comfort. I pushed myself further, working long nights and early mornings without rest, yet even when I felt like giving up, I kept going because every sacrifice I made was for him, and every step I took was for his future. Then something unexpected happened when my son entered a competition at school. Although I did not think much of it at first, the results changed everything, because he won clearly and confidently, which drew attention from teachers and admiration from other students. For the first time in a long while, I felt a deep sense of pride as his name began to spread and new opportunities started to appear. This made me realize that all my sacrifices were not in vain, but instead were building something greater than I had ever imagined. Soon after, we received a life-changing opportunity in the form of a scholarship that offered him access to a better school with more resources and stronger opportunities. When I held the letter in my hands, I could barely speak because it felt like a dream I had once wished for but never expected to come true. When my son calmly asked, "Can I go?" I smiled through tears and said, "Yes, of course you can," while feeling both joy for his future and fear of the changes that were about to come. As he entered this new environment, I worried at first that he might struggle or feel overwhelmed. Instead, he surprised me by adapting quickly, observing carefully, learning deeply, and growing stronger under pressure without breaking. One day he looked at me and said, "I won't waste your sacrifices," and those words touched me deeply because they showed that he understood everything I had done for him. In that moment, I realized that he was not just growing, but becoming something powerful and extraordinary. Over time, he continued to develop in ways I could not fully understand, because every time I watched him, I saw focus, discipline, and quiet strength. One day, he created something that drew attention from teachers and others around him. As his recognition grew, I felt a mix of pride and disbelief because I remembered where we came from, and I saw how far we had risen. Turning struggle into strength and pain into progress. As his opportunities increased, more doors began to open, and mentors reached out while people began to recognize his name, which expanded his world beyond what we had ever known. As I watched him grow, I realized that our journey had transformed from survival into something meaningful and powerful. In the midst of this progress, a shadow from the past remained in my heart, because I could not forget Adrian. Although life was moving forward, there was still a part of me that wondered why he left and whether he would ever return. Meanwhile, somewhere far away, Adrian heard my son's name, and although it meant nothing to him at first, something about it lingered in his mind and made him uneasy. So he began to look deeper, comparing details and timelines until confusion slowly turned into fear, because the more he examined, the more everything began to align in a way he could not ignore. Suddenly, the truth became clear, and with that realization, shock and regret overwhelmed him as he understood that the son he had abandoned was his own, and for the first time, he felt the weight of what he had lost, leading him to make one decision, which was to find us again. One day, he stood at my door after all those years, and when I opened it and saw him, time seemed to stop, because everything I had buried came rushing back. He finally spoke, saying, "I know the truth. I felt the past collide with the present, yet I remained calm as he tried to apologize and explain himself." I reminded him of his own words, "I didn't ask for this," which made him freeze as the weight of his actions settled over him. My son walked into the room, everything changed once more, because Adrian was now face to face with the life he had once walked away from, and this time, there was no escape from the truth. My son stood beside me with quiet confidence and strength, no longer the child I once carried alone, but someone who had grown into a powerful and respected individual, and as Adrian looked between us, I saw regret in his eyes, deep and undeniable, because he realized he had lost something he could never regain, while I stood strong and unmoved, no longer needing his validation, his apology, or his return, because I had already built a life without him, and in that moment, I understood that some choices cannot be undone, and some paths, once taken, cannot be walked again, so I stood there complete, not broken, and for the first time in a long while, I was at peace.